Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Hudson. I'm an author, journalist, speaker, and I'm thrilled to be part of this virtual summit on faith, politics, and civility. And I'm grateful to my friend Michael Ware to be having a dialogue with me about these important topics. I will introduce Michael, and then we'll have a short conversation about these important themes of faith, politics, and civility. So Michael is the founder, president, and CEO of the Center for Christianity and Public Life, a new nonpartisan institution in the nation's capital with the mission to contend for the credibility of Christian resources in public life for the public good. He's a leading expert and strategist at the intersection of faith, politics, and American public life. As one of President Obama's ambassadors to America's believers, according to BuzzFeed, Michael directed faith outreach for President Obama's historic 2012 re-election campaign. Michael was also one of the youngest White House staffers in modern American history. He served in the White House faith-based initiative during President Obama's term, where he led evangelical outreach and helped manage the White House's engagement on religious issues and values. Michael is also the author of Reclaiming Hope: Lessons Learned in the Obama White House about the Future of Faith in America. He also writes for The Atlantic, Christianity Today, USA Today, Relevant Magazine, and other publications on faith, politics, and culture. So Michael, thank you for being here. And I know you care a lot about this topic of faith, civility, and public life. In fact, I think that the first time I even became aware of you was when you were here in Indianapolis, where I'm based, where you gave a talk on civility. And you had lots of great topics there. And of course, that's the topic of my forthcoming book, The Soul of Civility. And so I'd love to hear from you. What is the intersection? How do these things fit together? Faith, civility, public life.
Yeah, no, I love the question. For me, civility is about the public recognition of the dignity of strangers. There's the Cornel West quote that justice is what love looks like in public. I think civility is what grace looks like in public. It is the way that we treat people with whom we are not intimates, with whom we share a community, but do not are not necessarily sort of in close fellowship with. It's the way we treat them with dignity. It's also, I think it helps set the place of public life, and particularly politics. It helps to order it rightly. I think so often when people push back on the idea of civility and politics, it's because they often think that they will get something out of being uncivil, or that certain people do not deserve civility, or that the objectives that they have to achieve in public life sort of are inconvenienced by civility. And I think that can often lead to some pretty destructive places. And so, yeah, I think it's really important. I think civility has often been, as you all know, sort of misused as a way to shut down debate or just sort of exclude people from conversation, and we want to oppose that generally. But when we're thinking about our own conduct, when we're thinking about the kind of people we are in public life, civility is something that we could uphold while believing passionately and with deep conviction about public things.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you, Michael. I think you're right that a lot of people recoil at the mention of civility in public life today, because as you said, they think it's a barrier to getting done what they want to get done. It's a handcuff. It's kind of, like Socrates and Thrasymachus, like being good, being just is a handicap. Is it a handicap? Is being civil a handicap to being successful and gaining and maintaining power?
Yes.
So one thing I unpack in my book, and I know you have my book on your desk by your nightstand, and you're reading it I've already sent Michael a review copy, so the book's not out yet. But so thanks, Michael, for one day hopefully looking out the book. But one distinction I make in the book that's central to my argument is that there's a difference between civility and politeness. That politeness is the technique, it's manners, it's etiquette. Civility is like deeper. It's as you mentioned, recognizing and affirming the dignity and respecting that in other people, and that sometimes requires telling them that they're wrong. That requires engaging in robust debate. It sometimes, as you know, even requires protest. Taking to the streets and for a greater good. That's the soul. That's the heart of civility, not politeness, not this tone policing, not this suppressing of dissent. And that's what. So I think people confusing these two concepts causes us to want to get rid of both of them. We don't want civility in public life. Like they're just tone policing. They're just repressing. People in positions of powerlessness and keeping people in power in positions of power. So that's one way I try to think through that important concern that you expressed in my book. I'd love to hear from you, though. Tell us about the Center for Christianity in Public Life. What was the origin story of that, and how does that relate to your passion for Christianity, public life, and civility?
Yeah, so as you said, we have the mission to contend for the credibility of Christian resources in public life for the public good, and we do so not out of a spirit of antagonism or domination, but out of a spirit of loving service. And so we have great confidence that Christianity is up to the task of our public life. We think that Christians ought to be oriented toward the public good, and that and this goes, I think civility is, important here insofar as Christianity is good news. And if what Christians have to offer in politics is not, now perception is one thing, and we can't control how everyone sort of perceives, but if Christians don't think that their public activity is good news, then something is fundamentally wrong. And so at the center, we help explain Christianity to the public and advance Christian resources for the good of the public. That's one side of our organization, or sort of one stream of our work. And then we also grow, resource, convene, and represent the community of Christians who are convinced of the centrality of spiritual formation for civic renewal, that the kind of people we are has much to do with the kind of politics that we have. And so we launched in October and have been really thrilled by the response we've received, and think this work is critical for both Christian communities, but also the broader public.
Excellent. And so are you writing white papers? Like what are the plans? You mentioned just offline a moment ago, you have a fellows program. Tell us all the different avenues that you plan to manifest. Yeah,
great. So when we launched in October, we announced 3 programmatic commitments. We have a young professionals community, which is just thriving. We have a public life fellows program. We'll be announcing our fellows in January of 2023, our first class of fellows. But that's a program of we anticipate 12 fellows that are both contributing to our civic life while pursuing integrity in their faith. And so we provide resources to fellows who are doing that and offer them as sort of examples of the kind of public presence that we want to see more of. And then finally, in the fall of 2023, we'll hold our first of what we intend to be an annual conference called For the Good of the Public. And this is a public-facing conference that will present a positive vision for Christian political and public participation. It will be held in DC, and folks who want to sort of stay up to date on announcements related to the conference and the rest of our organization can go to ccpubliclife.org. In addition to those programmatic commitments, we're in the fray. We're helping journalists and civic leaders understand the way that Christianity is functioning in our public life, and we're helping pastors and religious leaders understand our civic life and be able to navigate our politics and public life with faithfulness.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Michael. Do you think that being a public leader today, a Christian public leader today, is uniquely difficult and put in the context of American history and in human history?
No. I think there are unique challenges to being to Christian leadership and politics and civic life, but it is not uniquely challenging. One of the stories that I think I once gave a talk at a church in New York, and after the event, there was a reception, and a woman walks up to me and says something along the lines of, I'm so thankful that you're there in Washington, trying to live out your faith in politics, which seems to me to be really dirty and so much compromise, and I really don't know how you do it, but I'm glad someone's trying. Mm-hmm. And she meant it in sort of the best way, and we had a great conversation. And at one point, I asked her what she did for a living, and she goes, "Oh, I work on Wall Street." And so I think Christians and really there are ethical challenges, and there are challenges to being integrated with one's values and what the kind of person one hopes to be, and then the kind of person that one finds themselves to be in the moment. Like those kinds of challenges apply to public school teachers and people on Wall Street, and yes, people in politics. And so, no, I don't find this to be a uniquely challenging time in the scope of history or in the scope of vocations, but there surely are unique challenges to Christians, and really to all of us in politics. Politics is vying for our affections in really profound ways, in ways that are supported by incredible amounts of money and technology that we need to be aware of and understand that if we aren't paying attention to how we are engaging, it doesn't mean that we're sort of not being influenced by politics. It probably means that political forces are influencing us and shaping us without our knowledge, without our direct input, and that's a scary place to be. Yeah,
that's a great point, Michael. That's a point I make in my book about civility. That civility is an America problem, and it's not a now problem. It's a problem of the human condition, that we're defined by our a profound sociability. Like we long to be in relationship and community with others, yet we're fallen as a human, as a species, and we're inherently selfish and self-interested. And because of our fallen nature, the social project, relationships, and civilization and community will always be fragile, and that there will always be that tension in our nature. There will always be a battle between those two aspects of our nature. So I think you're right and wise to affirm this is not a new problem, but that you're right. There are unique challenges. You mentioned money in politics. But there's also things like social media and the internet, and that those weren't around during the Civil War, and who knows what the Twitter battles might have been like, pretty vociferous. Or to a point I've heard you make before, like we've had a civil war, right? We've had violence in our nation. We have violence in Congress, and I like to say that history is both caution and comfort. It's comforting that we're not the worst. Like we're thankfully we're not quite on the precipice of a civil war yet. That's a comfort. But the fact that we have been there before, that's caution. That's very caution. What can we?
Just one thing I'd say is So, so I think sometimes folks hear this and say, "Well, it sounds like politics is really complicated. I'm probably safest if I just don't engage there. There are these like forces at play, but I think what I want to say, and I think you'd agree with this, is that it's all just life. And imagine saying there are unique challenges in my in the marriage relationship. There are unique challenges in your relationship with your kids or at work, and yet somehow we have this idea that it's the public that's the optional part. And maybe if I feel like I've perfected myself, then maybe I'll sort of be ready to engage in public life and politics. But I'd say you don't better yourself without engaging. And we'd never say, well, I won't start parenting my child until I feel like I won't make any mistakes, or that I have everything in order. I know exactly what my theory of parenting is. No, you actually like learn in the doing. And you can't press pause on that. And I'd argue that it's unwise to sort of think that you can or should press pause on our obligations to our political community and the communities in which we live.
Mm-hmm. So last question for you, Michael. Do you think that being a Christian and being committed to civility, being committed to the dignity, respecting and affirm the dignity of the other, strangers and friends alike, do you think that takes certain professions in public life or certain actions off the table? And if so, what?
Yeah, I mean, I think deceit, manipulation. I think we need to really we need to be respectful of people's autonomy in terms of their decision making, and I think we need to be. It's very hard to uphold civility in politics if you don't uphold things like the rule of law and access to the ballot, because civility is something that says, we could solve our problems through the ballot box. We could solve our problems through deliberation. But if the deck is stacked against a fair access to our civic life and participation in our civic life, then it undermines the sort of the claim and the logic of civility. And then I'd say, we need to be wary of sort of undue coercion. We need to be careful about going directly to motive and ultimate statements about who people are, as opposed to dealing with what exactly it is that they're advancing in a particular debate, and dealing with sort of the means they're advancing. So those are a few things I'd keep in mind. We need to be we need to be wary of using tools in the political toolbox that may seem to be effective in the short term, but actually fray the social fabric in a way that makes it difficult for the project of self-governance to endure over the medium and long term.
Right. Two things that you just said that I thought were most powerful takeaways from that question of what's off the table. One, commodifying people, right? Like instrumentalizing others, not using thous as I's, right? To borrow King's
exactly right.
Secondly, what you said about, I'm sorry, I've lost the second thing that I loved what you said, but I loved everything.
Sure.
But thank you so much, Michael, for being here. Can you give us your website one last time so people can stay engaged with your important work?
Yeah, sure. The website for the nonprofit is ccpubliclife.org, and I run a Substack with my wife at reclaiminghope.substack.com.
Excellent. Thanks, Michael, for being here.
Thanks so much. Great to be with you. Excited for your book, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.